Hey, welcome everybody. My name's Ben Jackson. I'm the co-founder of the nonprofit Upsolve, and I just want to thank you for joining us tonight. Debt and bankruptcy can be a really scary and often shameful thing to think about and talk about. And so it's really cool, and I'm really proud of you for making the important step of actually taking some time to learn more about it and think about it and really face those scary things head on. Now, before we dive in, I want to share a quick story with you. About 8 years ago, I had $60,000 in credit card debt. 60,000, that's way too much for me even now that I'm back on my feet financially. And it was even more for me back then because I only was making $20,000 a year driving for Uber and Lyft. And no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't get ahead. I ended up on food stamps and I was so ashamed of myself. And it wasn't until I stopped thinking about that debt as something to be ashamed of and thinking about it as an obstacle to overcome and to overcome with bankruptcy that I was able to move forward. Filing bankruptcy honestly changed my life. It set me free to let my hard work actually matter, to help me put myself in a better financial position instead of falling further and further behind. And so I decided that thing that set me free, bankruptcy, needed to be accessible to more people, which is why I co-founded Upsolve to do exactly that. And now it's my pleasure to spend all of my time helping people get free, break free from that debt, achieve the American dream, just like I did. And that is what this webinar is about. Helping you overcome that fear, that anxiety, and the questions that block you along the way so that you can break free and pursue your dreams. So we're going to be doing that tonight. This is a live webinar. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll feature them, answer them as we're able. If there's something that's just really been, on your mind, you've not been able to get an answer to it, you've been worried about it, you've wanted to find some place to ask it here. Nothing is off limits. Actually, I shouldn't say nothing. I'm sure we can find something that's off limits. Anything about bankruptcy or debt is not off limits. And let's jump into it. Tonight, I have a wonderful guest with us. I'm really excited to introduce her, Juliana Simmons, who is Upsolve's head of philanthropy. Juliana leads our efforts to keep Upsolve free, which is an important part of what we do, right? Because when you have debt, you can't afford to pay somebody to help you with it. So we make Upsolve free so that you don't need to. And Juliana helps us do this by partnering with foundations or funders who care really deeply about economic justice. Her work directly supports the people that we help every day. So Juliana, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ben.
I am so glad that you are. I've wanted to get you on here for a while because your energy is just really infectious. So really important question for you though. You ready?
Ready.
Before we jump into learning a little bit more about you, I have to know this one thing. If you could instantly master one completely useless skill, what would it be?
Oh, it has to be useless?
It has to be useless, totally useless. It doesn't solve any purpose for what you do at work any day.
Okay, it would be the skill of learning how to get dog hair out of the crevices of my couch. Not totally useless, but useless for my work.
I love that. How many dogs do you have?
I have 2 dogs, very hairy.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like you can do it if your dogs are the same color, but as soon as you get a white dog and a dark haired dog, it's just all over. You can't wear anything. Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're already getting questions here in the chat. So I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions and we'll sort of alternate through with these ones here. So lightning round, what do you do at Upsolve?
So I am Upsolve's head of philanthropy, which means I handle all things fundraising, grants, money.
Okay. Fundraising, grants, money. What types of people and organizations give money to the type of work that Upsolve does?
So since Upsolve is a nonprofit, we are working mostly with foundations or people who have come into wealth that want to give back and care about helping people resolve their debt.
Okay. Awesome. And I know Upsolve does bankruptcy work. We mentioned that a second ago. What does bankruptcy mean to you personally? I'll share what it meant to me before I filed and what it means to me now. Before I filed, bankruptcy to me meant failure, right? It meant you've reached a point where you just screwed your life up and you should be ashamed of yourself financially. And this is for people that couldn't hack it just by working harder. That's what Dave Ramsey told me. And now it means the only way that I had to move forward. And it's often the same for other people. What does it mean to you? And I'm curious if that's changed over time.
Yeah, definitely has changed over time. After being in debt myself, I see bankruptcy really as a lifeline. I think a lot about how we live in a society where
Mm.
inflation is so much outpacing wage increases, and we're really set up to rely on debt to be
Sure.
our way out and our bridge through that situation. So I think about bankruptcy as a lifeline to help people bridge that gap.
Yeah, I love that. Like you can't get yourself out just by swimming out. Sometimes you need a lifeline.
Exactly.
So we've got a question here from Mark Lindstrom. Mark, I'm actually going to swap Juliana's face so you can see her, and I'm going to hide down here. So Mark is asking, if you're on food stamps, do you have to include them in your means tests to be able to qualify for Chapter 7 bankruptcy? So thanks for the question, Mark. People who don't know what the means test is, it's essentially a test that the federal government put into the bankruptcy law to determine if you actually need the relief that bankruptcy offers, right? You can't be, buying 50 TVs a week and like selling them on eBay and making all this money on the side and whatever, and like still file in some instances. Like your income needs to be below a certain level, or it's assumed that you don't really need this bankruptcy. I don't know why I picked that example. Ignore everything I said. It's just, do you actually need this bankruptcy? So food stamps are a type of not income, but sort of like expense assistance that people receive. And Mark's asking, do you have to report those as income on this test that determines if you need bankruptcy? So no, they don't usually count as income. You don't include them on your Chapter 7 bankruptcy as income, but you do list them as assistance that you get on your forms. So they don't matter for the means test, but they do matter for showing the trustee, hey, I really do need this relief. Like my income, including my SNAP benefits, don't sufficiently offset my expenses, but they don't count against you in terms of the means test. So thanks for your question, Mark. Juliana, back to you with another one, and then we'll handle some more of these. So when you thought about Upsolve, because how many years have you been at Upsolve now?
Just about one, soon to celebrate my
Woo!
first year
1 year
anniversary.
anniversary. Congrats. What brought you to Upsolve in the first place? Like, why this mission and these people?
Yeah, I love that question. So I have worked for nonprofits for about a decade, always kind of in this fundraising space. My background's actually in public health. So if there's any other public health nerds on the call,
Love
they
it.
will know that, when we talk about social determinants of health, economic mobility is one of them. And I found that it's foundational to help completely. I started out working in environmental health and environmental justice, supporting farm workers, and quickly realized that without finances, without the wealth to pursue medical help, without the wealth to really do anything, people are really trapped in that cycle of poverty and that cycle of just unwellness in general.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I said, I want to work in economic mobility. This is the most foundational driver of health and wellness overall. And here I am at Upsolve, happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I love that. It really is, especially in America, like money is core to everything. And to borrow a line from that sage Kanye West, having money and everything, not having it is like it really just drags down and weighs on every part of your life, including your health. So I share that mission with you. So Stephanie's asking, what if you're on FMLA and do not have any income or disability benefits and want to file for bankruptcy? Will you need to show what income you made before or currently, which is zero? Great question, Stephanie. So FMLA, the federal benefits that determine, how much you can get paid and if you can stay on your job long term while you need to take a leave of absence. Really important policy for a lot of people. So when you file bankruptcy, you're going to look at your income over the last 6 months, not just your current income. So if the FMLA you have right now is $0 income, you're still going to need to go all the way back to 6 months and report that. And your average is going to be based on that specifically. So if that's $0, great, you still report $0. If it's, some subset of that, maybe you work part of it, but not all of it, you would report your income in that way. And whether you pass the means test and whether you'd be considered, needy enough for bankruptcy in that instance would be determined on that 6-month ratio. Great question. All right. Another one from Nunya Business, one of my favorite YouTube names. If I'm married, if I include my husband's income, what will happen? He makes good money and I don't want anything to happen. This is a really interesting question. So premising this not functioning as an attorney here, not legal advice. When you file with a spouse, it can be a little bit more difficult. Or if you're married, it can be a little bit more difficult. Upsolve doesn't do joint filings. So if you do need to file with your spouse, we can make a recommendation to a lawyer who can do a free evaluation with you. But generally speaking, what you put as your household income is what you would report to the IRS as your household income. So if you would claim your husband's income on your tax filings, like maybe the two of you filed jointly, then you would need to report it on your bankruptcy filing as well. But if you don't, if you are totally separate households, totally separate finances, things like that, you wouldn't claim it on your means test necessarily, but you would claim it on your forms when you list assistance that you get. So you would say, oh, my husband contributes this amount per month to my rent, this amount a month to food, et cetera, et cetera. And that would tally up your total income on those forms, which helps the trustee determine, when they're looking at your finances, the full picture of your finances. But yeah, definitely base it on your tax household income, and our screener can help you figure that out. Thanks for the question there. So Juliana, I'm curious what your story with debt and financial recovery has looked like. What's been your journey with finance, moving from where you've been to where you are now?
Yeah, I think my situation might be pretty common. It was the big financial shock of divorce. So
Yeah.
in getting divorced, I somehow managed to rack up $30,000 in debt.
Easy to do. Yeah.
It's hard when you don't even know what that was towards. When you're looking back on it, you're just like, here it is. And it was really, really scary to be a mom with 2 kids and have $30,000 in debt and realize you are sinking on it every single month because of the interest. And Upsolve is really personal to me because I wish I had known that Upsolve existed. I went the route of working with a credit union and doing loan consolidation, which was okay, but I still paid a lot of interest even after consolidating all my credit card debt. And it probably wasn't the best or quickest solution for me. So seeing what we can do here at Upsolve and how many people we can help at no cost just really means a lot to me.
What did it feel like looking at that debt when you had that $30,000? Like, how'd you feel about yourself and your hope for the future?
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I was in therapy at the time and had someone to talk to because it really feels stigmatizing and embarrassing. And it was nice to have a neutral third party to talk to. I was embarrassed. I didn't know how I got there. I felt like I was the only one and no one else. Everybody else in my life was doing so well. And then here was me, 10 years into my career and struggling and just trying to stay afloat. It felt humiliating. And now I have a very different perspective that this is practically a universal experience that so many of us go through. And so by bringing it out of the shadows, we can all realize we're on the same page and help each other out.
Yeah, there's been, I'm looking at the total tally, there's been about 25 total people that have joined this call off and on. There's 11 people sitting in here right now. Those are all people who are struggling with debt and curious about how to get out. So you're definitely not alone. And there's been thousands and thousands of other people at Upsolve that have had almost that exact experience, to a person, the story of feeling buried, feeling ashamed of that, breaking free. What did it feel like to you when you finally got out from under that debt?
Oh, it was so freeing. It was the feeling of everything I do from this point forward is an actual step forward in my life. The feeling like I'm on the treadmill and I'm not getting forward, but at least I'm not falling behind. And that feels so motivating and powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Got another question here. This one is from Joven. Let me just read this real quick, Joven. Okay, so if a credit card company has sold your debt to a collection agency and you're filing Chapter 7, do you notify the collection agency, the credit card company, or both? Another great question. So when you file your forms, you're going to list on those forms everybody that you owe money to. So if it's been sold to the collection agency, you would list the collection agency because you don't actually owe money to the credit card company anymore. They sold your debt. They wrote it off from their taxes, which, by the way, If you're feeling bad about, hurting a company or something like that, don't. It's actually often good for them to get that debt off of their books, so they end up better off. They sell it to a company who then tries to collect it from you for some amount, hopefully the amount you owe, usually significantly less than that. And they're the ones that you'd want to put on your service list. You'd say, hey, let's say LV&V Collections, I'm filing bankruptcy, and they get notified by the court. Now that does something really cool. It puts an automatic stay in place, which is a fancy court way of saying they can't call you anymore. Can't email you, can't text you, anything, which can be awesome if you're struggling with that. Sometimes people will still. So if that happens to you after you file, you just say, hey, I filed bankruptcy on this date. You're not allowed to call me anymore. And then if they keep calling you, then you can actually go to a lawyer because you may have, some legal rights that are being violated there. But yes, in terms of who you notify the collection agency that currently owns the date. Nunya sends another note here. Nunya, I love your name. It makes me smile every time I read it. I want to file a loan. When I was filling out Upsolve form, it asked for his income. I'm a stay-at-home mom and I have not worked for 5 years. Yeah, same answer holds. So if you filed jointly on your taxes, you would report his income in the household income in the screener. If you don't have to put it in the screener, but you do still list how much his income contributes to your household expenses. So, if you are a stay-at-home mom, you're not bringing in income, then 100% of the expenses on rent or mortgage would be from his income, 100% on all the other things, et cetera. It's not, if you got through the screener and you weren't disqualified on that, it shouldn't disqualify you to have his income in terms of the bankruptcy. Very likely you'll be considered to need the bankruptcy and you're not going to have any issue with the trustee in that instance. All right. So Juliana, I'm curious, what were the things that you did to get yourself out of debt?
I tried all the things that most people probably try, like, I'll stop buying coffee when I get somewhere. And unsurprisingly, that did not turn the tide on my debt. I tried so many things. I tried calling the credit card companies and saying, please, can I have a lower interest rate? And some did give it to me. It was so minimal. It really took, I took on multiple jobs. It was really, really hard to make a dent in it.
Yeah, taking on multiple jobs is such a rough thing. Like, that's what people always tell you. Like, I think I remember hearing, it was like Ben Shapiro or something like that, some podcaster who essentially said, like, if you're poor, stop being poor. You're like, what? Like, how many hours are there in the day? Like, I can't work my way out of this. This doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And really, you do need a lifeline, like you said earlier. Let me see here. We've got a few more questions coming in. So I know you mentioned your work is bringing money in the door, like helping connect people who want to give to economic mobility and help people move forward and connecting them with Upsolve. What did those conversations typically sound like?
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the world who recognize that our system is really skewed against everyday people. And a lot of these foundations or these people that want to give their money to a good cause care about debt relief. They know that people are struggling. They know inflation has hit everybody really hard. They hear about layoffs and they want to help and they don't know how to help. So essentially, when I talk to foundations, I am showing the connection between what they care about, which is helping people, and Upsolve. So explaining to them why what Upsolve does is so important, like what kind of impact we have on people's lives, how bankruptcy can improve people's net worth and their credit score, and all the wonderful things about filing bankruptcy. With the ultimate goal of these foundations, giving Upsolve money, which can offset the cost for users, which is why we can be totally free of cost.
How much does it usually cost somebody to file bankruptcy?
It usually costs at least $2,000 on average.
Jesus. Yeah, think about it. I mean, like, what is that? 1/15 of what you owed in total in debt, which you also couldn't pay. That's insane.
Exactly. I would have had to tack it onto my credit card bills.
Yeah. Not going to work. Yeah. Right. That's so crazy. What is, we talked about how like shame and that feeling of like failure, especially in our culture, is a thing that makes it hard for people who are in debt to get themselves out because they need bankruptcy or something like it, and they just can't get over that mental block. What is the conversation about bankruptcy sound like with people that are rich and have money to give?
Oh,
Because
yeah. That's such a good question.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when rich people talk about bankruptcy, there's no shame in it. It's this
Mm,
amazing tool that helps
yeah.
wealthy people get richer. It helps corporations get richer. The
Mm,
social stigma is really only there when normal, everyday people like us hear people talk about bankruptcy in that context, which
mm,
is another reason that I'm really passionate about our mission, because
yeah.
bankruptcy is already helping rich people get richer. Why not leverage it like we do here at Upsolve to
Yeah.
help normal everyday people just get by and do better?
Yeah, it's one of the craziest things about our economy is that almost everything that works for rich people also works for people that aren't rich, but you either don't know about it or can't access it because there's something in front of you. And debt for most people that are, not well off is the thing in front of them. And like once you can get rid of that, it opens up so many doors, which I'm sure you saw once your debt was gone.
Yeah, and we don't have the financial safety net that wealthier people would have, that if we make the wrong choice, it's dire
Mm, yep.
consequences. Whereas wealthier folks, if they make the wrong choice, that's okay. They can redirect. So I know
Mhm.
that fear also holds a lot of people back from going for it, making a change.
Yeah, definitely. Haley, got a question here. If I'm going through a foreclosure and wanting to save my house through Chapter 7, what do I do? Yeah, so this is a great question. Foreclosure proceedings can be tricky and like so stressful. Same thing with eviction proceedings. If you're thinking about losing the place that you live in, I can't imagine anything that will really just get your blood pressure up faster. It's a hard, hard thing. So just to kind of set expectations. At Upsolve, we help people do standard simple bankruptcy cases. And by simple, I mean you have really no expensive assets that you might lose in the bankruptcy process. And one of those expensive assets would be a home. So we wouldn't be able to help you, Haley, do a free bankruptcy filing, but we could help you to a lawyer that could potentially help connect you to a lawyer that could help you protect the amount that you owe in your home. So here's kind of how this works. Every state, for the most part, has what's called a homestead exemption. And that is a part of the bankruptcy law that will protect the amount of your house that you own, which is called your equity. So let's say you owe $500,000, you've paid down $300,000, you now owe $200,000, and you have $300,000 in equity. That's typically how that works. And if that house was sold and you owed that 200,000 still, let's say you sold it for 500, you would get your 300, the bank would get their 200, and you guys would move on. So that $300,000 is your equity, and that could potentially be taken and given to your creditors to help pay off your debt if you file bankruptcy. But those exemption protections, they protect a portion of the equity in your house. So let's say it's 30,000, 50,000, whatever it is. Anything below that, you would keep in a bankruptcy filing. Anything above that, you would have to typically pay back to your creditors, and the trustee would facilitate that sale and the repayment. So that can get tricky. There are things to do to kind of like reallocate certain exemptions from one to another. Sometimes there's wild card exemptions that will cover any of the difference. And so when you're in that instance and you really need to protect a significant amount of equity, doing a bankruptcy filing with a lawyer can be a great way to get out of debt, but you are going to risk that equity. And so it's helpful to have an expert walk you through that process. If you're not doing something like that, if you don't have a lot of equity, Upsolve can be a great option for you. Now, you mentioned stopping the foreclosure. So the bankruptcy filing will stop all legal proceedings, including foreclosures. So it can give you some time to kind of breathe while you figure out what to do about the house as you work with the lawyer through the bankruptcy. Thanks for the question. Juliana, what is your philosophy of money? That's a really deep question, but like when I think about this, I used to think about money as something that I kind of had to hoard and something that really like wasn't able to be enjoyed, right? Like it was just there to keep me afloat, to pay off my debts, and every now and then to like go to Starbucks or something like that. But once I got out of debt, I was able to start thinking of it kind of like you said before, as like a tool that could help me build the life that I wanted to build. How do you think about money? Is it a tool? Is it something to just enjoy? What's your philosophy of money?
Yeah, that's maybe something I'm still figuring out, but
Yeah.
it's the biggest shift for me was going from money feeling scary. Like I could feel myself emotionally shut down
Yeah.
whenever I was like, I'm going to sit down and write a budget or something. I could feel myself getting scared.
Mm,
Now it feels way more like an approachable topic that helps me live the life I want. And it doesn't have that connotation of like, this is dire at all times. I would say the not being crushed by debt. Like you really start to look at money differently.
Yeah. It's become something other than a trap for sure.
Yes, it can go well. Whereas before it felt like this was always a sore spot.
How do you think about building wealth now? And it's one thing that people say when they first get out of debt is they're like, okay, now what? Like, what do I do next? Like, what's the first things that you started doing to build a little bit more stable financial position?
Yeah, I am very recently out of my debt, so I'm probably in a similar position as a lot of our users who just become debt free. So I wouldn't say I have a solid plan yet. Just a few months ago, I
probably more realistic then.
Right, my very realistic goal now that I have. We're going to say wealth, even though that feels like a grandiose way to say it. But now that I'm not in debt, it was just starting an emergency savings fund, because before my credit cards were my emergency fund. If I was in a, if my car broke down, I'd put it on a credit card. So trying to build up just a little buffer. So when things inevitably come up, I can pay for it out of that little savings account. That feels like, saying that out loud feels so small, but to somebody who is living paycheck to paycheck, it's actually huge.
Yeah. Well, because how much of your time, your mental energy is like taken up thinking about what if, right?
Yeah, like, exactly. So like that it's that freedom feeling. Yeah. It's really nice.
I love that. I love that. Follow-up question here from Nunya. Nunya, I appreciate you being so active in this. We're going to get you an answer. For those who actually have answers they didn't ask, you can email help@upsolve.org, and our paralegal team can help answer these questions as well. So Nunya says, if I list my husband's income, would he technically be filing for bankruptcy also? So no, he wouldn't. Filing for bankruptcy together means you have joint debts, like you both owe the debts and you need to jointly include those, because if you file bankruptcy on debt that's jointly owned, often the responsibility will pass on to your husband if you don't file jointly. So including his income doesn't require that. Having joint debt that you need to file joint bankruptcy on would require you to file jointly. Another question here from Nadia. It's funny, on the mobile view of this, my face is completely gone. So maybe that's a benefit to some people. I spend almost my whole income every month on cards due to the high interest rates. I applied for a personal loan online and turned out I was scammed. Oh no, they have your info and $950 of your money. Ugh, that sucks. Did anything like that happen to you when you were in debt, Juliana?
Not this particular thing, but I'm so sorry this happened to you.
Yeah, I remember, like, it seemed like anybody and everybody was like out to do a scam of some type, like refinance it on this. And it's just so frustrating that people take advantage of people like Nadia. So yeah, I'm sorry that happened. The bankruptcy proceeding would definitely help you deal with those high interest debts, right? Like, doesn't matter what happened with that debt specifically. Once you get out of the rest of your debt, it can be, the breath of fresh air that you need to deal with things like this. That would be a good thing if you haven't already done it, to report to like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You can find them on Google, Better Business Bureau, and obviously like to your local police. I'm sorry that happened, Nadia. Javon, let me read this real quick. I found out I'm bad at reading and talking at the same time, Juliana.
It's a hard skill.
If you're filing Chapter 7, is there a specific corporate address to notify a credit card company, or you just list the same address on your credit card statement where you would pay your bill? So yeah, whatever address is on the bill is typically the best thing to send it to. Credit card companies are really used to people doing this. Like Juliana said earlier, right? Businesses do this all the time. Like, it's a way that they handle money. And they're also really used to people filing bankruptcy. Do you remember the last count, Juliana, how many consumer bankruptcies were filed last year?
Oh, I don't.
Put you on the spot with it.
Google search.
It's a crazy number. I want to say it was like, so we were 1% of it, which was 27. So something like 27 million consumer Chapter 7 bankruptcies every year. So yeah, people are used to hearing about this from the people that owe them money. And if you send in a notification to the address in your credit card, they will have processes for sending that over to the right department internally. All right. When you, I'm now hoping a Chapter 13 will consolidate in one payment and a 3-year payment. So Nadia, Chapter 13 can definitely be an option. For those who don't know, Chapter 7 is a fresh start bankruptcy. All of the debt that's what's called unsecured, which means it doesn't have property that you promised to give if you default on that debt. All of that debt, which is like credit card debt, personal loans, things like that, those can typically be unsecured debts that are wiped out in bankruptcy in a Chapter 7. Chapter 7, fresh start, wipes it out. Chapter 13 is a repayment plan. You and the trustee in the court agree to say, like, okay, instead of paying $60,000 back, we'll let you get off with $30,000 as long as you make these payments on this date consistently. Now, the data on this is unfortunately really bad. Most people don't succeed at their Chapter 13s. I don't know, Juliana, do you remember the most recent statistics on this one? I'm putting you on the spot again here.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Not a problem at all. They don't work well for many people. And the reason is if you're struggling now and you don't get rid of that big drain on your income, the odds are really high that you're going to keep struggling. I believe most people end up filing Chapter 13 twice before they ever even get a discharge. And they have to pay money on that. And it takes a significant amount of time to get out of that debt, which means that the debt continues to grow. Chapter 13 is a great option as an alternate if you need to get out of the debt now and you need to get a fresh start now. Did you consider 13 at all when you had your debt, Juliana?
No, I didn't. I like, it felt like a black box. Like when I was Googling things online, I was very confused. Yes.
Okay, so let's see here. We did that so the house and cars can be protected. Everything is in his name. Yeah, so Nadia, if all of the mortgage, things like that are in your husband's name and you're just filing on debt that's in your name for things like credit cards, then that's typically an instance where you can file by yourself. You're not filing jointly. You're only filing on your debt. And unless he's a joint signer, it's not going to affect him at all. So if that's the case, great. This could potentially be an option for you. And you can go to upsolve.org and see if that's going to be a fit. All right, Juliana, we've reached the end of our time somehow. If you could leave this audience and people who are thinking about debt and finance and trying to find their way forward with one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be?
It would be to just always remember that you are not alone and there's a community of people going through this who are rooting for you and who have paved the way before you. So you're going to make it.
I love that. You definitely are. I did, Juliana did, and over 17,000 people that have used Upsolve has as well. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Juliana, thank you so much for being here. It was awesome having you. I hope what you heard on this webinar today made you feel a little less alone and a little more hopeful. And bankruptcy isn't a dead end. It's a second chance, and there is no shame in using the law to get yourself back on track, just like Juliana said. So if you want to check your eligibility for bankruptcy, you can head over to upsolve.org. You can try our free tool. You can also read our full Chapter 7 bankruptcy guide for a deeper dive. It's linked in the description below. And remember, this is totally free because Juliana works tirelessly to make sure that people donate money to keep Upsolve free for people who really need it. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe for future sessions, and share it with friends or family member that you think could use it. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Take care.